now call to order the development public hearing of on September 25th, 2023. The time is 6:34 p.m. Ben, would you please call the roll?
Member Orr?
Here.
Member Volt?
Here.
Member Shroya?
Here.
Member Warren?
Here.
Member McLeister?
Here.
Member Matheny?
Here.
Member Wyrick is abstaining, 6 present.
Okay, our topic this evening is ordinance 71-2023. Ben, would you please read the title for the record?
An ordinance declaring the improvement of certain real property located in the city of North Canton, Stark County, Ohio, to be a public purpose, declaring such property to be exempt from real property taxation, designating specific public infrastructure improvements that, once made, will directly benefit the parcels for which improvement is declared to be a public purpose, requiring annual service payments in lieu of taxes, establishing a municipal public improvement tax increment equivalent fund, and providing related authorizations pursuant to Ohio Revised Code sections 5709.40b, 5709.42, 5709.43, 5709.832, and 5709.85.
Daryl, if you'd give the summary of the legislation.
Happy to. This piece of legislation creates a TIF district. That district is described on page 10 of your packet, where it is outlined. For those who are listening, it is approximately 176 acres in the North Main Gateway area. This is the area that principally includes Meyer and any other development that will follow on. Within this district, tax revenues that are non-school will be directed to this district. We believe that the estimate is approximately $73,000 a year, which could grow with the passage of time. It's important to note that the taxes affected are those that will be in place on or after January 1, 23. The purpose for this TIF is to fund public infrastructure improvements as permitted by law. Mr. President?
At this time, anyone wishing to speak in favor of ordinance 71-2023?
Are we allowed to ask questions?
It's not really an exchange, but you can make comments if you'd like to.
Oh, okay.
At the podium, sir. Yeah, if you could. Yeah.
Introduce
Thank you.
your name and address, please.
My name is Bill Wolves, and I live on at 1330 Hyacinth Avenue. My wife and I have lived there for about 28 years, and I was just wondering, you're estimating about $75,000 a year. Do you know what the average would be for a North Canton property owner?
We can. Why don't you approach us after, and we'll discuss the particulars.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. At this time, anyone wishing to speak in opposition of ordinance 71-2023? Christina? Final opportunity for anyone wishing to address council. Okay. Any comments from us here?
This item will appear on the agenda.
Yes. All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Revolt moves.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Adjourn. So we'll start the
Do they still have that?
So funny story how that all started. His son racing, said avid and radios. So he started a second business called DX Engineering, which was just basically cabling and antennas. And then he expanded that into distribution of everything on radio. He is the largest distributor. DX Engineering is the largest distributor. Anything handmade.
Well, I tell you what, he had some nice things. I think, man, oh man, that's like a candy store in there.
It is. It is.
Leo from the old
Hey,
church.
I'm gonna ask you a question.
Yeah.
October 9th.
Yes. Open topic. Yes. Meeting, right? Yes.
He didn't
Now,
realize it was gonna be.
We talked about
something
maybe
like
5 minutes.
yeah, 5 minutes. I got a presentation. I've gone over it plenty of
We
times.
gotta check with Ben.
Yeah, I wanna see
he
if
can
it
connect.
could be up
He said he
there.
votes twice a week.
Ben is the guy that you need to ask if he can connect.
Can I talk to him?
Absolutely. Well, he's trying to get the thing
Oh,
to
okay,
work.
okay.
Might catch him in between this meeting and the next one.
Okay, okay, thank you.
He's trying to get these cameras working.
You know, we brought his name up earlier. I went to his bar.
Aaron.
Crazy.
Oh, I
I feel like it's been cool in here the whole time tonight.
MJ.
It's very-
Yeah.
Was it?
I was like, okay, roll the sleeves.
But when I said 2 years ago.
Tonight.
Right, I will give you. Yeah, well,
Seems like it's cool.
and if you don't get the concessions,
They're thinking about it.
then give me a call.
What was wrong with that?
I didn't see nothing, but I seen.
Call to order the public zoning hearing of September 25th, 2023. The time is 6:45 PM. Vendors, please call the roll.
Member Matheny?
Here.
Member Wyrick?
Here.
Member McLeister?
Here.
Member Waring?
Here.
Member Schroen?
Here.
Member Revolt?
Here.
And Member Orr?
Here.
7 present.
Okay, our topic this evening is ordinance 61-2023. Ben, would you please read the title for the record?
An ordinance amending the zoning map of the city of North Canton to reclassify 1434 Pittsburgh Avenue Northwest, Stark County parcel number 9208870 in the city of North Canton in accordance with the amendment procedure set forth in chapter 1182 of the Planning and Zoning Code from residential single-family small lot to residential multifamily A.
And Daryl, would you provide some summary of the legislation, please?
May remember some time ago, we began to eliminate the OB designation and give those properties that were OB something that was more compatible with or consistent with the current use. I took this particular property and we rezoned it to residential, R50, single family. Property owner who wasn't attuned to our action, subsequently decided that he would really prefer a residential multifamily zoning. So we have sent to the planning commission a request that this parcel be zoned RMFA, which the planning commission agreed. It is going to come back to us tonight to take that property from R50 to RMFA. And you have on page 9 of your packet the location of the property, which is at the intersection of Pittsburgh and Liberty. We have had no opposition to this move. Fairly routine.
At this time, anyone wishing to speak in favor of ordinance 61-2023? Okay. At this time, anyone wishing to speak in opposition of ordinance 61-2020? And then final opportunity to address council on ordinance 61-2023.
I move we conclude the public hearing.
Yep, this will be on tonight's agenda.
It'll be on tonight's agenda.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Now call to order the city council meeting of September 5th, 2023. The time is 7 p.m. Opening prayer. Jamie.
All right, could all stand up, please? This past weekend, I was made aware that Sam Bacon passed away. And just had a couple of notes put together here. Aside from being Fire Chief Bacon's father, he had a long history of service to the citizens of this community as a member of the North Canton Fire Department. Samuel Bacon Jr. started in December of 1972 as a volunteer firefighter and became the fire prevention chief in March of 1980. In 1995, he was the recipient of the Richard Cross Memorial Award for his service, dedication, and leadership towards fire prevention and arson. His service to our community continued until his retirement in 2008, and I've even heard that he served a little bit on the ZBOA. So on behalf of all of us here tonight, I'd like to offer our condolences to the entire Bacon family. Just kind of thinking of how to properly honor Sam, something kept coming up, and this is originally published in a book called A Celebration of Poets in 1958. This is the Fireman's Prayer. When I am called to duty, God, whenever flames may rage, give me the strength to save some life, whatever be its age. Help me to embrace a little child before it's too late, or some older person from the horror of that fate. Enable me to be alert and hear the weakest shout, and quickly and efficiently to put the fire out. I want to fill my calling and give it the best in me to guard my neighbor and protect his property. And if according to my fate I am to lose my life, please bless with your protecting hand my children and my wife. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ben, would you please call the roll?
Member Warren?
Here.
Member Shoya?
Here.
Member Volt? Member Orr?
Here.
Member Matheny?
Here.
Member Wire?
Here.
Member McLeister?
Here.
7 present.
Okay, can I have a motion and a second? Oh, it's not. Sorry. Read with that, your instructions. For consideration, request of a hearing for a new C1 and C2 liquor permit application for Family Daughter at 700 North Main Street.
So moved.
So we're going to motion and second to not request a hearing. So this bypasses the.
Okay. So the motion is made by Mr. McLeish.
Yes, sir.
To not have. Roll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay. So we'll have public speaks. This will be legislative items only tonight. At this time, members of the public wishing to address City Council may do so. Each speaker will be given 5 minutes. Comments shall be limited to legislative items appearing on tonight's agenda only. The rules for speaking and the speaker's time limit will appear on both screens. This will serve as the only warning for anyone in attendance, and any violation of the rules will result in ejection from the premises. Anyone wishing to address council tonight on legislative items only may stand at the podium.
Chuck Osborne, 307 Fairview Street Southeast, North Canton, Ohio. I want to speak to item 8F, ordinance number 85, 2023, regarding yard care providers. The discussion last week, well, first of all, let me just say, all of these laws here in North Canton are created to protect city residents. That should be your sole concern. Last week, you talked about, I guess, looking out for these providers, these landscape providers. The provision to allow continued working beyond, I think it's 8 o'clock or something like that. I would urge you to have hours starting at 8 o'clock in the morning, not 7, and end at 6 p.m. It's up to a provider to be able to estimate his time on the job. And if there's any possibility it's gonna be a long day, just plan on a 2-day job and bill the job as a 2-day job. You stop and think about it, having their, in addition to being able to look out for neighborhoods and residents by having a tighter time frame to work, you're also looking out for the employees of that company. Who wants to come and do that heavy industrial kind of work at 7 a.m. with the possibility that they may have to work on the site until 10, a 15-hour day? And that's just on site. They first have to go to their place of business, gather their necessary equipment, travel to the site. So obviously they would probably have to get to work before 7 a.m. And then you're going to work all day long and stay till 10 and leave the job site at 10, not get back and unload all your equipment till 10:30, 11, I don't know where they're traveling from. So who wants to allow their employer to push them into working 15, 16, 17-hour days, in addition to imposing all this noise requirements on residents? So I would urge you to certainly tighten these work periods, starting at 8 and finishing at 6, so people can enjoy their dinner time. And as Mr. McLeister pointed out, the legislation might be a little confusing, so I would insert a phrase in there stating that this just applies to commercial operators. The homeowner, if he wants to cut his grass at earlier hours or later hours, that's between him and his neighbors, or she and her neighbors. So please give this a little closer thought as to what you're imposing on your citizens and what you're allowing business operators to impose on their employees. Thank you.
Was 1678 Meadow Lane Drive, Southeast. Good evening, Mayor, Administrative, City Council. I would like to talk about the proposed new fees for permits, 83-2023. The way I read this, if I decide to demolish my single-car garage, it's gonna cost me $500 to start with for a demolition permit. It's gonna cost me again to get a new building permit, plus 15 cents a square foot for that new building permit. I'm gonna be in $700 before I put a nail in the ground. So I believe raising the demolition fee to $500 is excessive. The original fee of $1.50 should cover the administration fee. I will still have to pay for a new building permit. Oh, and don't forget the BBS fee if it's a residential, which is 1% on top of the total. In reference for the fees for applications to come to the ZBOA meetings going from $75 to $200, I believe that's a little excessive also. In the past 3 years, the zoning board has met 13 times, 6 times in 2021, 4 times in 2022, and at the present, counting tomorrow night, it'll be 3 times in 2023. 13 times in 3 years doesn't seem to abuse the problem. And I would like to close with a question on the new fees form. What is a voluntary property code inspection that costs $200? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Maybe somebody at the end of the meeting can tell.
Anyone else wishing to address council tonight? Final call. Moving on to old business. Ben, would you please read the title of ordinance 70-2023?
An ordinance amending chapter 703, registration of rental units of the codified ordinances of the city of North Canton to expand registration requirements to all rental units in the city regardless of building size.
The Community and Economic Development.
President Sharp.
You need to step up. Okay, we have tonight the final reading of our ordinance, which requires the rental registration of apartment units with more than 8 units per building. Ben, when this was introduced in, I believe, August, indicated that we had 1,538 8 and below units registered. And we estimate that we will capture about 1,400. Ben is well underway. You may to prepare for that registration to begin year's end. Contrary to assertions made at the time we adopted the first piece of legislation, our review has indicated there are some significant issues within the rental community here in North Canton. I would remind listeners that a rental is a business. We regulate businesses. And our mission here is to ensure that those properties provide safe housing for the people who are tenants. I think there was some concern at the time of the initial piece of legislation that we weren't wrapping everyone in at the time, but this is the commitment to follow up. It's made then, and so everybody will be in. In talking with Ben, we believe the registration process will go a little quicker this time because, frankly, we're going to have fewer structures. We're going to be looking at the big apartment complexes. Ben has a scheme in mind on how to expedite that will be hopefully a little business friendly, a little more business friendly for the owners. The only other thing I would point out, and this is for all of you who are going to be wrestling with these rental issues in the future, you've got about 2,900, estimated 2,900 rental units in the community of approximately 6,500 housing units. That is not insignificant. And it is something that we need to monitor you will need to monitor very carefully as you move closer and closer to the 50%. So, are there any questions or comments at this time? Mr. Matheny?
I wonder what happens if somebody refuses to have their units inspected. Do they just pay a licensing fee every 6 months and re-up?
Turn that over to the administration.
For the most part, that's what happens.
Is there any recourse after 3, 4, 5 times of re-upping to actually inspect a property to make sure it's safe? Talked about all the gas for the hot water tanks. Should we look at that maybe in the future?
No, I mean,
Okay.
There are only certain sets of circumstances where we can get an administrative warrant to go in and look. Not complying with one doesn't give us the right to go into your property. We don't have a recourse for that. It just gets expensive for that entity, but that's cost doing business.
I would say, neatly summarize it. I think one of the things that we want to be careful about is that we do not overstep our constitutional bounds here.
Absolutely.
Okay? But, there is Nothing that would prevent the city from indicating which units have been inspected and which have not. Just as we publish a list of licensed contractors. These are units that have been inspected by the city. And so any potential tenant could conceivably look at a future page and then make a decision whether they want to do business with it.
We actually already do. If you go to our rental registration page and scroll all the way to the bottom, there's a
There you go.
link to a search by address for, is the unit I'm interested in renting registered?
There you go.
Thank you.
Christine?
Good.
Jamie?
No, I think this is great. I'm glad we're getting them all on.
We're good? Sure.
Well, I got a couple things I want to ask. As I was talking to some constituents on Saturday, a lady rents her house and she feels there's black mold in the basement. She has mice, and she had to replace her furnace. She pays $1,800 a month. Can she call City Hall to ask, or she can't request a registration, or what is her rights?
Well, she can certainly call and find out if her property has been registered and what.
It hasn't been.
Okay, and then we would start the process of providing notification to the property owner that they need to register, that we've identified this as a rental property, and falls under the guidelines. And then it goes down the same path. Ultimately, it's the property owner who has the right to determine whether or not we can have access to the property.
And then I voted no on this issue when it first came out, because I thought it should have been all of them. So thank you, Ben, for moving quickly on this. I appreciate it.
Well, I think it illustrates the administration came to us with this proposal. They wanted to make sure that we would walk before we ran. They wanted an opportunity not to be overwhelmed, to work the kinks out. We had, I think, some issues, some challenges as the thing got stood up. Ben did a terrific job massaging the process to make it truly user-friendly. And we should also note that, we're still, to your point, John, we're still collecting property owners who aren't registered. And they're trickling in. We got 1,500. Bottom line is, there's still some that are out.
Yeah, you know, it's not unusual to see something every week that's unusual. I saw one here the other day where it had a light fixture in the ceiling, like a kitchen light, let's say, and they had unscrewed the light bulb, put in a different screw-in mechanism that has a plug that you can plug something into it, like an electrical cord. That electrical cord turned out to be a power surge strip that was duct taped to the ceiling, to which all kinds of devices were plugged in and cords were hanging down. So it's obviously, a fire hazard, and that's the kind of stuff that, we hope we're catching.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, then I'm going to make a motion that we adopt the third reading of ordinance 70-23.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Patrick, did you get a picture of what was hanging from the ceiling?
We did have a picture of it.
I need to know what appliances.
Oh, what?
And then the ceiling.
Toaster.
I don't know.
Okay, Ben, would you please read the title of ordinance 76-20?
An ordinance amending chapter 155 personnel regulations, specifically subsection 155.04F, full-time schedule of compensation, item administrative specialist, of the codified ordinances of the city of North Canton to reclassify the administrative specialist position from hourly to salary in accordance with Federal Fair Labor Standards Act provision.
David?
Okay, so third reading, this is simply moving from that hourly rate to a salary non-exempt position. Exempt position, excuse me, I got that backwards. And it is not changing the compensation of individuals in that position, it's just merely a change. Questions, thoughts, comments, concerns? I didn't think there would be, it's pretty simple. I'll make a motion to adopt the third reading of ordinance 76, 2023.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ben, would you please read the title of ordinance 61-20?
An ordinance amending the zoning map of the city of North Canton to reclassify 1434 Pittsburgh Avenue Northwest, Stark County parcel number 9208870 in the city of North Canton in accordance with the amendment procedure set forth in chapter 1182 of the Planning and Zoning Code from residential single-family small lot R50 to residential multifamily A, RMFA.
Daryl?
As we discussed in our public hearing, we have the property owner has requested this zone change. It was approved by the planning commission. And now we're here to give it the first reading. And changing this particular property from R50 to RMF. Make a motion we adopt.
Right, seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Ben, would you please read the title of 71?
An ordinance declaring the improvement of certain real property located in the city of North Canton, Stark County, Ohio, to be a public purpose, declaring such property to be exempt from real property taxation, designating specific public infrastructure improvements that, once made, will directly benefit the parcels for which improvement is declared to be a public purpose, requiring annual service payments in lieu of taxes, establishing a municipal public improvement tax increment equivalent fund, and providing related authorizations pursuant to Ohio Revised Code sections 5709.40B, 5709.42, 5709.43, 5709.832, and 5709.85.
The tongue twister. Daryl again.
We indicated during our public hearing, we are establishing.
Point of order, Member
Do I
Ryder.
need to? Sorry, thank you.
Good call.
Let's rewind this. As we indicated in our public hearing, this particular piece of legislation establishes a 176 acre TIF district in the North Main Gateway. This is non-school tax revenue that will be TIF. We believe it will generate approximately $73,000 for the city to be used for public infrastructure. And this is on only new taxes, not taxes that are in place. Again, non-school.
That's 73,000 per year.
That's the estimate. That's the estimate. But, you know, if someone would decide to build on an outlet, put up a couple of buildings, the value of those buildings would be captured into non. Any questions or comments?
And the Board of Education did not vote.
Yes, they did not.
Just curiosity, is the business owner, since it's gonna be a service payment, do they see it differently in their taxes? How
No,
does that, so it shows up just like their normal taxes, but it is designated as a service payment?
here's what happens is business owner pays his taxes.
So he sees the same tax bill, the
He sees
same breakout?
Same tax bill.
Okay,
The auditor, or I guess the treasurer, auditor will then split it off
okay,
and we'll capture it.
I just want to make sure business owner wasn't confused, seeing something on their tax that said service payment, and then that would draw questions.
But your question is pertinent for another item on our agenda. And this underscores a theme that we have discussed from time to time, how critical it is we have the right people in place to follow up and file the appropriate documents. Because it goes off the rails, that doesn't happen. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I make a motion to adopt the first reading of ordinance 71-23.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ben, would you please read the title of ordinance 81?
Christine.
Get Christina.
Oh, yeah,
Especially because it's her committee.
that's true.
Yeah.
Yes.
An ordinance amending chapter 959 rental rates and policies of the codified ordinances of the city of North Canton to clarify regulations and repeal outdated policy.
Parks and Rec, Christina?
This is basically just some cleanup work. We talked about it in committee, pulling things out of law that should have never been law. Anyone have any questions? Patrick, anything to add? All right, move that we adopt the first reading of ordinance 81, 2023.
Second.
Seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ben, would you please read the title of resolution 82-20?
A resolution stating the municipal services that will be provided to three parcels owned by Walsh University and described as follows. Located at 1903 Filzer Street Northwest, North Canton, Ohio 44720, containing 0.45 acres and being further identified as parcel number 5280443, and 1915 Filzer Street Northwest, North Canton, Ohio 44720, reading too fast, containing 0.45 acres and being further identified as parcel number 5209461, and 1939 Filzer Street Northwest, North Canton, Ohio 44720, containing 0.354 acres and being further identified as parcel number 5207611, totaling approximately 1.25 acres of land, being part of the northeast quarter of Section 16, Township 11, North Plain Township, Range 8, West, Stark County, Ohio, in the event said territory is annexed to the city of North Canton and declaring the same to be an emergency.
Daryl?
Identified as he has reviewed much of our previous legislation. As part of an annexation, we're just bringing in a piece of parcel that documents were not filed properly. And so we are repeating the process, and part of that legal process requires that we adopt a resolution describing the municipal services. Are there any questions or comments?
What municipal services, would there be a police, fire?
They would not have water. They already have Canton municipal water.
Because Filzer's a big street, these are just parts of it right behind the school there.
Is this where you're gonna provide the color you were alluding to earlier?
Yeah, this is astonishing. This paperwork never got caught. Then caught. And again, I think it underscores kind of a theme that we have discussed over the many months. We can run this place like a discount store, or we can hire competent, diligent people to manage our affairs. This is an example where This should have never.
This is supposed to be
2017.
2017. So,
it's frustrating.
Very.
but I think, the administration had a long list of issues. You may recall seeing it on the screen here. This is just one of those, as we peel the onion. So, good news is, it got caught by the team. And it's being corrected. So that's the good part. Anything else? All right, I'll make a motion, we adopt the first reading of resolution 82-23.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Kind of a motion and a second to suspend the rules of council requiring 3 readings.
So,
Move.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And can I have a motion and a second to adopt resolution 82-2023 under suspension of the rules?
Revolt moves.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ben, would you please read the title of ordinance 83-2023?
An ordinance adjusting rates and fees for building and zoning permits and associated plan reviews in the city of North Canton.
Jeremy's turn again.
It is, we discussed this, include some comment. This is the first reading this evening. The administration would like to weigh in at this time.
Yes, thank you. So it was discussed at the committee last week to kind of look at a couple things and opportunity to get together with my team and review two of the items specifically in the list, and then there's a third that came up during public speaks tonight that I will address. But as far, first of all, as it relates to planning commission and ZBA, to the larger extent, the demolition contracts, I'd like to make sure that we're setting the script here correctly. So. As it relates to planning and zoning, or really any of this stuff, the question is, who is going to pay for the services? Who's going to pay for it? Somebody has to pay for it. Whatever the permit is. Now, we have in the past taken the approach here of not doing anything in a timely manner. In this case, these rates haven't been adjusted since 2010, 11. So 12 years. That does make it seem like in some instances, a hike on a demo permit could seem a lot, and I'll go into a little bit more detail on that. But there are costs involved. So just as it relates to the ZBOA, $75 doesn't sound like a lot, I know that, but you have to look at it from the perspective of what we're trying to do here, is that, the users who are going to use it should have to pay what the rate is. Otherwise, it's subsidized by the general fund. So for the lovely lady that's the court reporter, $75 isn't going to cover their cost. It costs more than that. And if we have to do a public hearing, $80 an hour. The administrative staff that's involved for these things, as we go through this, 75 just isn't getting it done. So we looked at it, priced out what it is, the people that are involved, and $200 is where we came out. Many of the communities are far more than that. But we're not pricing it based on what is charged in Massillon or in Canton, $350, or in other places. It's what is our cost. We're not here trying to make money, but I'm not trying to lose it for you either. We're just trying to cover the costs that are associated with it. As far as breaking it out, that the question was asked, can a resident have a cheaper rate than a commercial business? Now we're going to get into an equal protection clause issue, because the same issue that's discussed for a commercial enterprise in the planning commission could be the same issue that someone that would on a residential site could inquire. What's a fly? I'm sorry. And the fees have to be the same structure. It can't be 100 for a resident to do something that the commercial enterprise would do for $200. So it's the same fee, whatever that fee would need to be set as. As far as residential properties, ever making it to the planning commission, it doesn't happen. What are the types of things that could go there? Well, somebody wants to rezone their property. That could go to the planning commission from GBA to RMF2, as we just did earlier tonight. If somebody made that petition request to do that, there's a cost associated with that. They're going to try to run a business out of their location that they presently don't have. That's a cost of doing business to them to get there. It's a business enterprise. So on the planning side, it's pretty much all commercial that is making the application. On the ZBOA, you do get differences between residential and commercial as far as the applications. In the last year, there have been 3 residential requests that relate to fences and fencing that have made it to ZBA. That seems to be the most popular. But again, if you're going to ZBOA to seek a variance, as tomorrow night we have a variance. A individual was wanting to build a shed, sought a variance to put it at a certain location in their property. Now has decided against that and wants to do something different location, different structure. It's $75. It's going to cost us more than that. So who pays for that? I think what I've tried to do here in my tenure, as limited as it is to try to set it up that you all understand what the cost is of running government. And that the idea is that things should, the users, should pay for the services that they're using. Our first one that we did was, just digress again, but for the mayor's court. We were in the red on the mayor's court. Give out a ticket, and then it costs you more to process that ticket. You lose money. Where'd the money come from to pay for it? Magistrate, clerks, police officers, overtime, supplies, materials, everything comes from the general fund. So we said, hey, there's a more sensible way to do this. The municipal court will handle it. They do a better job, more efficient, and we'll let them do it, and it doesn't cost us anything. 0. And we get a piece of that revenue back for every ticket that's sent down there. Okay, we did it with the water rates. Didn't properly size them, deal with that over the years. And as we get into next year, the administration is going to bring back a revised asset management plan for council to consider, because things have changed drastically since we last did this 2 years ago, 3 years ago. 3 years ago. That whole pandemic, inflation, supply chain costs are out the roof. Yeah. And we have another federal mandate with the lead copper that's going to cost every community a fortune to deal with. So these things have to be, your administration should bring these things to you. And as it relates to planning and zoning, what I'm telling you is that in reviewing it again, I'm comfortable with the structure. That's what it costs us to do it. It's policy process. People pay for it. You 7 plus the mayor set the policy. I'm telling you that this is the process we go through in notifying. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead,
I'm
finish it.
still
No,
babbling. I know.
I just had a question.
Okay. Is it on that one, or I was going to pitch to demolition?
Well, I guess it kind of goes to that. So when you say the rates have to be the same, so we have commercial rates and residential rates for water. So like, why couldn't they be the same? And I guess it does go to demolition, because I'm picturing like a major building that's has been demolished versus somebody's little side, structure. And even in North Canton, there are structures that just have the roof and the 4 poles. Would that be required for a demolition? And is that 500? Because I would think, that would be a deterrent. And so we're trying to get some of those things demolished. But if they can't even hit the beginning, fees.
Okay, so help me remember if I
So it's the water. So we do have different rates
I
for
want to
water.
address that first. So, the case with commercial use on the water versus residential use, it's a whole different setup for how the volume that is being used. And so commercial rates are different than the residential rates, but every residential rate is the same rate if you're inside the city. So we're not differentiating. In this case, you're using a product, and on the commercial side, you're using more of it.
Yes, could
Okay,
be.
but on this thing with the applications, these are just pieces of paper that are being pushed. And so you're pushing a piece of paper for commercial enterprises, you're pushing a piece of paper for residential, same process is being followed on both.
To a degree, but then if you had a demolition and then I guess we had to go out and look at that, it could be a small structure, right? Like a one car garage versus something that housed, 20, whatever,
Well,
tractors.
on the commercial demo, it's gonna be a lot more than $500, because there's a square footage
Okay,
calculation that's involved. But
okay.
as it relates to the small demo, I mean, here again, we have to say that, thank you, that the rates hadn't been adjusted for a long time. And what was the process? So there's a lot more to it, doing a demolition today, and we're following a better process than we did before. So for instance, in some instances, and Mr. Davis's might be an exception to the illustration that he was on, but is there a water hookup at the demo?
Mhm.
We'll get to those, but is there a water hookup? Because somewhere in that demolition, there's a water meter that we would like to retrieve the water meter so that it can be reused. Right? So where do you disconnect the water from? Is it at the curb box, or are we disconnecting at the main? Who's paying for that? Who's overseeing that? So, for instance, if you take the property that was down in John's ward at, I think it's 1515 South Main. So there was a house on the corner of Everhard and South Main on the southwest corner. You could hardly see it from the street. But it was an abandoned house. It was a demo, and it was eventually demoed. But if we didn't have a procedure in place, we wouldn't have been able to reclaim the meter. And the next question we ask them is, well, is it your intent to rebuild something there? Because if it's not your intent to rebuild something there, I don't want to leave a curb box. You have to demo it back to the main. So that's involving what then if you're demoing back to the main, it's generally going to involve a road opening. Somebody's going to have to open the road, demo it at the main, and then patch the road, fix it back to the standard. Now we're involving engineering. Other utilities, gas utilities, electric utilities for demolition, somebody has to make sure that the utilities are disconnected and certify that before the demolition starts. That's going to be on our people. In some of these that we've done, we've had to have an asbestos survey performed beforehand so that we make sure that there isn't any environmental issues going on with particles in the air. These are just a couple off the top of my head, but what we've developed is a process through OpenGov that then is instrumental in creating that provides for an online application process, and it takes it through these various steps and notifies every other department head, superintendent at each level, where are we with this? We got the water treatment plant with backflow devices when we're disconnecting from a commercial tear down, stuff like that. So it gets to be, it's a lot more if it's done right. But if you don't want to do it right and you just do it, then there's a lot of risks with running that. So I don't think that it's out of line in the case of, tearing down a shed, a one-car garage, if you will, is where you used, and you're going to build another one-car garage. The cost of $500 or $600 or whatever it turns out to be as a percentage of what the total cost is to rebuild that, I don't think that that's too much to ask, and to make sure that it's done right to protect everybody, all the properties around. So it's my recommendation to council, for what it's worth, that we try to keep our costs tied to what our charges tied to what our costs are, and that we not subsidize. This is not a money-making operation. It's based on, this is what, with the people that are involved in the processes that we've set up, that we think these are the right charges. Some went down, some went up.
Other questions? Christina?
No.
David?
Still hurting on the zoning board of appeals, $200, but I understand that if the meeting extends beyond the 20 minutes or 30 minutes that they tend to run, it could get to be more expensive. It's $100 more than what I think it should be, that's all.
Mr. McLeisher?
Nope, all good.
Mrs. Ware?
All good.
Mr. Moore? Good. All right, good discussion this evening. This is only the first reading, so we'll have the pleasure of mulling this over for a couple of weeks. I will make a motion that we adopt the first reading of ordinance 83 dash.
Mr. Wright seconds. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Would you please read the title of ordinance 85-2023?
An ordinance establishing chapter 711 yard care providers of the codified ordinances of the city of North Canton in order to regulate the provision of landscaping services.
Okay, how it's written, from 7 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock? 8 o'clock,
7.
7? 7 to 7. And then it does have a overlap period up until 10 o'clock. They can't finish a bigger project. That's about it. We've heard some families speaking about this. I'd like to maybe call for a discussion on this. I'm personally not in favor till 10 o'clock. You know, we're people with small children, we're talking infants to that, and they put their kids to bed 8 o'clock at night, some sooner. Will there be a lot? Probably not, but it would happen. And, you know, it's between your neighbors and yourself when you want to cut your own grass. I've cut my grass no earlier than 8, but I've been out there at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. But, and I stopped doing that because I had 2 neighbors complain. So I kept it till about 7. But I would like it to just be 7 to 7. You know, it's up to them to bid the job right. You know, you buy price, you buy twice. So exactly. So these companies, yeah, they're having problems with staffing and their exchange. Everyone, there's not enough help. They understand it. So if it has to be a 2-day job, let it be a 2-day job. Nothing wrong with it. So, the other,
Yeah, I'll weigh in. I'm indifferent about the 10 o'clock, but I do like the ability of giving a company an extra hour or so because, or whatever amount of time we determine, because it's only going to raise the cost to the homeowners if, for whatever reason, they come up to 7 o'clock and like, oh my gosh, we still need to clean up, or we still have an extra half hour or an hour to go. I think it just makes sense to give them a little run over time. 10 o'clock, I could go either way, but I think to my understanding, this is not a situation that is commonly complained about. So I also ask, are we looking for a problem that really doesn't exist, I guess is my question, but.
I don't know too many yards in North Canton that takes over 3 hours to cut.
I'm thinking more tree service.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's a safety issue working after dark in those cases, masonry, tree service, those type of things. So I'm with John in the fact that I think we should make it earlier. I think 9 o'clock is fair to allow them time to finish what they started before 7. It's light until long after that.
Yeah, especially in the summer. Yeah.
So
In a tree?
And,
I don't
But
think
see-
you're gonna be up inside a tree at dark.
but see, that's the point.
That's
And
fun, was out there till 4 o'clock in the morning. I mean, it's. You
yeah,
never know.
that's true. They were
It's
trimming in the middle. That was, cause that was what, about 5-6 years ago?
Yeah.
Right over there on Portage. I
Yep.
remember that night well. I don't know that they'd necessarily be using chainsaws and chippers. I guess I envision they're winding down their day, they're sweeping up the street, they're cleaning things up, they're putting their tools back in the truck. But at the end of the day, I don't know that this ordinance is powered to regulate the safety of a job site. That would fall under OSHA, I would think. And if an employee is concerned that that the hours are too long, and maybe they can go find another employer. But as far as the hours, I mean, I think 7 to 7 is, I want that runoff. I'm fine with your 9 o'clock, I guess. I'll just shut up and say that I'm fine with your 9 o'clock. And I agree with you, Dave, but I would like to offer something. I think it's gonna be an exception, not the rule.
Living on American Electric Power's Nightmare Street, Gambler Avenue,
Mm-hmm.
we've had multiple situations over the years where we've had tree companies on the street at 10 o'clock, midnight, 4 in the morning, because the trees come down. Does this ordinance exempt emergency service?
And I think that's a
I
good
don't
question to
see
ask.
anything that exempts it.
That's a very good question to ask, because, yeah, if a tree comes down in the middle of the road, can't just say, hey, sorry, we gotta wait till 7 o'clock.
To your point, are we advancing something that we really don't have a big problem?
You consider tree removal and emergency services landscaping?
Can amend it.
Because right now it
Just
states
simply say, right
lands,
now, I think you've got a problem.
I think we need to define that better.
right now it states just landscaping.
Well, it says trees.
Yeah, that goes into trees.
It does say trees.
What brought this about? I mean, I've never had anyone contact me complaining about neighbors or anyone
I gotta
mowing.
tell you, in 40 years, no one has called me regarding landscapers at dusk, tree services at dusk.
Okay, well, I'm not gonna sit quietly by, I can hardly stand it. You aren't gonna get the phone call.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
no,
Yeah, what prompted
no
it?
Disrespect, I'm not mean, I'm just telling you, you're not gonna get the phone calls, sir. I'm getting the phone calls.
Okay.
Administration is getting the phone calls of where and when, because that's when people call, and they know that they can get us, and they call us, and we get the complaints. And I've been here, almost 6 years, and I can tell you that there isn't a year that goes by that I don't have one of these complaints. Out of 17,000 residents, to get a few complaints a year, is that warrant making a move? I would say that, I would rather recommend that council start, the least invasively as possible, and that we tweak it as we go, rather than start, completely, prescriptive. But I mean, these are all great things that we're hearing, as far as whether landscaping is emergency services. This would have been great to have, this conversation during the committee hearing, so that we could have inserted language or made these changes before you. But as we understand landscaping service. A landscaper is somebody who provides that service. That service is defined as a portion as to tree cutting. So to answer your concern, I would agree that if we want to exempt emergency services, we could do that as a recommendation. Or council could just not do anything. It's your call. It's policy process. People pay for it. I'm here to try to weigh in on if you establish the policy, what does the process people pay for it look like?
Let me do this thing. This is a first reading. I'm gonna make a motion, two motions. The first is that we amend section 71103, striking 10 PM and take it down to 9 PM. So that's gonna be the first motion. The second motion will be that we add in under definitions, a D, emergency services are exempted. I guess it's not really a definition, but we can find a better home for it somewhere. Or you can put it down and again, 71103, just add a second set of an additional sentence that emergency services are exempted. Mayor?
I think we need the exemption for emergency services, because that covers our personnel also, who comes out and clears, debris from storms and things like this. I don't mean to put the chief on the spot, but didn't we have a noise ordinance generally around 8 o'clock? Can you recall in any of our ordinances that I think most things ceased in the city at 8 o'clock unless, of course, you're at the civic center or, you're at a function. Even sometimes we have backyard parties during the Hall of Fame, graduation parties, but I thought it was around 8 o'clock. I thought that was what we used to use as a rule of thumb.
It came through, usually that's related to some type of noise amplification.
Okay, all right.
With that ordinance.
That's right.
It's not necessarily.
Did you catch that? Okay, that 8 o'clock was
Amplified.
noise amplification, stereos coming from cars or homes and residences, so.
I think 8 o'clock.
I was just trying to find a balance
Yeah,
there
I
that
mean,
maybe,
8 o'clock's a lot better than 10 o'clock, remember.
but it's up to you.
9, 10.
Let's start throw it out.
I would say 8 o'clock.
I say we leave it at 9.
Administration comfortable with 9? All right, I'm gonna make a motion that we amend.
Let me just say one thing. So are we using the term emergency services or an emergency service? For example,
I would recommend that you just make a motion to instruct me to have legal draft something for
that would
you.
be great.
Okay.
Well, here's my concern. My concern is, let's say a tree falls on a house
All right,
and it needs to be cleared out before a storm or something like that.
all right, let's do this then. This needs with the clerk's approval, and the rest of the council. Let's adopt the first reading with the instruction that this will be redrafted for the second reading and amended at that time.
Sorry, seconds.
We'll re-amend it.
All in
So I
favor?
make a motion, we adopt the first reading of this ordinance.
Sorry, seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
And clerk asks for a motion, I make a motion that this be.
Wait, hold on. President Story needs to call the results of the vote first.
That's it. Motion carries.
6
So just note for the record that one abstained and one voted no.
Motion carries 6 to
5 to 1.
5 to 1. Sorry.
Make a motion that this be returned to the law department for redraft and time of the second reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to department reports, let's go with Patrick. Gina.
No report.
Mayor.
Yes, thank you, President Story. Again, thank you, Councilmember McLeister for the comments you shared about Sam Bacon Jr. for his service here at the City of North Canton in the fire department. I had the opportunity to, throughout my law enforcement career, to have him be a fire inspector during my term of service, and he did a great job. He's a compliment to our department. I want to thank the Van Ostrom Young Coots, that's COUTTS, and Associates Assurance, once again, they sponsored a first responder dinner at Dogwood Shelter. They normally do this right around National Patriot Day, which is September the 11th, in recognition of 9/11. And families of first responders and their employees enjoyed an afternoon of food and a little bit of entertainment there at our Dogwood Shelter. So again, thank you to Will Van Ostrom and his team. For John Orr, John, I think I would suggest to your constituent who, whether this person has brought it to their landlord's attention, okay, of the issues, and if she has and hasn't had any action, I believe that person can also file a complaint with the Stark County Health Department, which we fall under here in the city of North Canton.
Okay.
So as long as she, I would say, report it to the landlord, then that person has every right to file a complaint with the Stark County Health Department and maybe help her get that issue resolved, or at least they can advise her on that. Just to follow up on that. And otherwise, that's really all I have to comment on tonight. Thank you for the discussion tonight on the ordinances, and that's what I have. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Mayor. Council Clerk?
I'd like to just briefly touch on the meetings calendar we'll talk about earlier. Sort of in my other hat, I, with Patrick's blessing, requesting you add council meeting on October 30th, doing, calendaring the Jackson Shared Development Agreement needs 3 readings before the term shifts over. And because of when the public hearing occurs, there are currently only 2 council meetings scheduled. So we need a 3rd council meeting to get that 3rd reading. And that's all.
Thanks, Ben. Go to Ward 1, Jamie.
All right. First thing, I would just like to send a big shout out to the folks at 720 Market. My family went there this past Saturday. It was another great event as always. And wanted to share something else. And this is not in my ward, so I apologize if somebody else was going to share it, but I just thought this was too cool not to share. I think we've all heard of Whole Latte Love and the mission that they have over there. Great place. They are going to be taking part in a live grant opportunity, and this is with Thrivent and Entrepreneurial. Oh, excuse me, I'm reading wrong. It's a live grant opportunity. They're up for $10,000, which would possibly benefit their curriculum with the whole community academy. What's really cool is I'm a big Shark Tank fan, and this is actually going to be live with Robert Herjavec. Is going to be one of the panelists, and so this is going to be happening at 7:30 on October 3rd. They shared it I saw this on LinkedIn, but they had it on, I believe, on their Facebook page. You can go and sign up and watch for free. I just think it is super cool to have such a great little organization here in town that's going to be pitching in front of a big powerhouse in the business world. So awesome. I thought that was super cool. So that's it.
Very cool. What to, David?
I have no report this week.
Ward 3, Stephanie.
No report?
Ward 4, John. I know you've got a report.
As I'm walking the ward, talking to the different residents, learning a lot. I've given them numbers to call. Listening to some of their ideas. And when the time comes, I'll be sharing some of them. One, for example, if the school levy passes and build a middle school over by the high school, there's a lot of land. How many acres the city owns, how many acres the school owns, but there's quite a bit of land. And a couple residents would like a over 55 community. like row homes or small ranches and stuff of that nature. That would be pretty good. It's walkable to the city. And I think that's one idea. But we won't know until things happen. You know, exchange of land and what have you. There's a big rumor mill coming. I brought it up. In Orchard Hill. Oh, there's gonna be a huge fence post put up and all of this. Regular school, I think they're in there now, the MRDD, and everything's going well. People love the pickleball courts. They love them. They want some more, and I said, hey, you know, I think pickleball might be peaking right now. It'll eventually go down. Everything does that over a period of time. Talking to the football coaches up there at Southwest or at middle school, they practice in front of the school, at the side of the school. You know, they understand they only got another year. Fields are built, so they're happy with that. By the shed, Pat has done a wonderful job with that. It's 100% better. You get grass in there, it's gonna be great. The clearing of trees, what he's done on a couple different roads, looks great. So, give my thanks to the administration. Blacktopping, I'm seeing blacktopping throughout the city and different wards. It's going good. The people are happy. Yeah, you're gonna have 1 to 2 to 3% that are always gonna complain. But they're mostly happy out. So, that's all I got to report.
All right. Thanks, Jim. Daryl. Christina.
Just quickly, I think it's been kind of an incredible month, or it's going to be. This past Saturday with the 720 market. This coming Saturday, we have the North Canton Chocolate Walk from 1 to 4. If you've not been to that event, highly, highly encourage. It's such a great way to get people into our local businesses. I love that event. It's $20. And then
You get 250 pieces.
you get 250 pieces of chocolate as well. No, you don't. You do not get 250.
Well, no.
We give out 250. You get like, yeah, maybe 50. But yeah. And then the New Berlin Festival is the following weekend on October 7th. So just a lot of fun happening on Saturdays. So for anyone who says we don't have things to do, they're not paying attention.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Did the girl at the chamber have her baby?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
All right, my report. Yeah, the chocolate walk is not a sprint. So don't start off trying to eat every piece of candy. You'll regret it after 10 stops. I did too. Unfortunately, I'll be out of town. Well, that's one of my favorite events, and people come from everywhere, so I think it's great. I don't have much. Buy and support local. Final call for new business. Seeing none. Let's move on to the meeting calendar here. October 2nd, we'll have a committee of the whole. October 9th will be a regular city council and open topic public speaks. October 16th will be committee of the whole. October 17th will be the joint hearing with Jackson Township at Jackson Township.
And at 5 p.m.
What's that?
And at 5 p.m., not our.
Yes, that's a good point. Then October 23rd will be a regular city council, and then administration has requested the additional city council meeting for October 30th.
Could we pass that as
There's nothing, we don't have to pass this, is just putting on the calendar.
No.
Oh, are you talking about?
With Jackson?
No.
No, it has to be 3 readings. Does anybody have a scheduling conflict with October 30th?
I do.
You do?
I'm out of state week
Okay.
before through that whole week.
I'll check.
Okay. Okay, let me know when you guys get a chance.
Do we just need 4?
We need 4, yeah. For.
Could we do it on the 23rd?
You already have a
You'd have
council
a
meeting.
back-to-back regular city council.
I know, double it.
Two city councils?
Oh, they're two city councils.
Yeah.
You meet later in the week.
Next day,
Pardon?
could do it the next day.
Do it on
Yeah, do it
Tuesday.
next day. Do it on the 24th.
I can't.
How we play with that? I don't have work. Dave, you'll be around on the 24th?
Yes, I fly out on the 26th.
Could you do the 25th, Christina? Is everybody available on Wednesday, the 25th?
I'll check.
Okay. Well, that's just.
So do we have four for the regular meeting?
I mean, we don't, I don't know what for, yes, that's what we'll have for. That's- so, 4 people. Let's just circle back to that. We'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nobody.